I've been a software engineer for 8 years now, but the first 3 or 4 years of being a software engineer, I had a difficult time even saying the fact that I'm a software engineer out loud to people. I felt like I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Why did somebody ever hire me? Who am I to think that I can do this job? It seems like just the only people that do it are geniuses. I didn't feel like I had any clue what I was doing, and everyone else around me knew so much more than I do. But now looking back, I actually was killing it. But in my head, had no idea that was happening. But I'm here years later to tell you that I still have imposter syndrome, but it's much better than it was then. And there's certain things that you can do to feel less like a complete and total fraud. Let's talk about what those things are. What is imposter syndrome to begin with? Doubting yourself, not feeling good enough, achieving success, but still thinking that you're a fraud. How did you even get there to begin with? That you don't deserve it, that you have no idea what you're doing, and you're scared. Almost every single person has experienced imposter syndrome at one point in their life, and probably will again, and probably are right now, and that's probably why you found this video. The trick to combating imposter syndrome is realizing that you have it, everyone around you probably does too, and it's gonna be okay. Something that helps me a lot is thinking about everything that I've accomplished, writing it down and looking at it, and saying, oh, well, maybe I actually am not a fraud. Maybe I should stop questioning myself as much as I do on the day-to-day basis. I've been doing stand-up comedy for 6 years. Every single time I go to do stand-up, I question myself completely. I go back to square one. I tell myself I don't do stand-up, that I'm not doing as much as everyone else around me, therefore I am not a comedian, or I don't do stand-up, etc. But I forget about the fact that I've accomplished amazing things. I've been on the same stage as Eugene Merman. I've started 2 YouTube channels. I've created tons of skits. I've created hours and hours of material. I've done a lot of really, really cool stuff. But I still question myself constantly because that's just being a human. I honestly feel like imposter syndrome can be a bit of a superpower. Usually if you have imposter syndrome, you're going to learn as much as possible to stop feeling like an imposter. Nobody in the world is ever going to know everything. That's just fact. You can say that's why AI is better than us. I disagree, but you're never going to know everything. I'm never going to know everything, and that's okay. We can do as much as we can to learn as much as we can about the field that we're in, or if you're a parent, learn as much as you can about parenting, etc. But you're never going to know everything. You're never going to be perfect, and that's okay. Have you ever walked into a work meeting and been terrified to ask any questions? Because if you ask the questions, people will know that you're a fraud and you don't know what you're doing. Here's the secret. If you never ask the question, you'll never learn what the answer is. And you'll continue to feel like a fraud or an imposter about that topic because you're not going to know the answer. You're going to continue to have anxiety about it. You're going to continue to be stressed. If you have a question, most other people in the meeting probably do too. Your imposter syndrome is never going to get better by not asking a question in that meeting. If you're working on a big feature and you have a question around how the product works, if you don't ask that question, there could be a huge thing that was missed. You might release a product with a big flaw, and if you had asked that question to begin with, it would have been solved. No one should be upset about you having a question in a meeting or a question about how something works or whatever it is. People will be impressed that you're engaged, you're listening, you want to know more about what's going on, and usually people will be happy to clarify. And if they're not, you might be in a bit of a toxic culture or workplace, just saying. In an interview setting, say you're asked a question and you don't know the answer. Option 1 is to lie and say you know the answer and guess the best you can. Option 2 is to say, I don't know the answer. However, I'd be so happy to learn everything I can about that question. And if you hire me today, the next time that we talk, I will know the answer to that question, I promise you. Personally, I'd respect number 2 quite a bit more than number 1. If I find out someone is lying in an interview, that's an instant no from me. And it's not about not knowing the answer to the question. I could care less if everyone knows every answer to every single question. But it's the attitude around being okay with being wrong sometimes. Everyone's wrong sometimes. Nobody is right all of the time, and not being okay with being wrong is not going to help you or anyone else around you. If no one's ever okay with being wrong, then there's never going to be discussion around things. You're never going to get to the actual right answer. It's going to promote a toxic culture in your workplace, and everyone probably will have imposter syndrome. Don't let imposter syndrome hold you back from following your dreams or whatever it is that you want to do. The first 3 or 4 years that I was a software engineer, I was so incredibly intimidated by being a software engineer because that felt like a black box. Like it felt like something that I would never actually become, that I was just a kid playing school, playing dress up. And it did hold me back quite a bit. It's like when you're little and you think that when you grow up, you're going to be an adult and you're going to know everything that's going on. You're going to know how to do life exactly. Spoiler alert, that's never going to happen. Every adult is walking around like, I'm just a kid inside. I don't know what I'm doing actually. And it's the same thing with most jobs, friendships, relationships, parenting, etc. No one is perfect. No one's ever going to be perfect. And accepting that helps. I like to try and talk to other people in tech about imposter syndrome. When you do that, you find out that everyone else around you thinks very similarly, is also not really sure what they're doing. And that feels nice. It helps so much to connect with your community and friends and your coworkers and talk about this. I know that imposter syndrome feels so isolating and scary. It's really easy to be alone with our thoughts and not talk about them. But once you realize that they're really quite universal thoughts, it helps a lot. It feels a lot less lonely. If you have stories kind of similar to mine, leave a comment below about them. I'd love to hear about it and how you got over imposter syndrome because I think it's such an interesting thing. I love to hear other people's stories and I love to hear how you overcome it. It's really hard to overcome, but it's so possible. And everyone that hasn't yet, you're going to. You are not 3 kids in a trench coat. I think, maybe you are. Almost everybody in the world has imposter syndrome, has it every day. I have it every day, and that is okay. The biggest thing is remembering what you've accomplished, remembering that you can do whatever it is that you want to do, especially if you're willing to learn as much as you can, work as hard as you can, and be okay with being wrong sometimes. If this is your first time at Code Emily, consider subscribing. I make lots of different videos, including tutorials around JavaScript and React, and advice videos like this one. All right, I gotta go play Among Us or something. Bye! Nobody in the world is ever going to know anything. Everything is... Nobody in the world is ever going to know anything, and that's just the truth.